Okay, I am back with another chapter of On Music. I'm going to be continuing my counting down of the Black Sabbath studio album Oeuvre, and I had to cut off early last time because of some technical difficulties. But basically, I set up the introduction and talked about the article I wrote, Black Sabbath Reincarnations, and read the introduction to that and interjected tidbits and factoids about the band's history throughout that. And then I got going on the countdown of their 19 studio albums. So, unfortunately, the technical ecstasy, whatever the opposite of technical ecstasy is, technical agony began after I'd done counted down album numbers 19 through 15. They were my least favorite Black Sabbath albums. I'll recap. I'm not going to talk about them. I'm just going to name them. So catch us all up here. My 19th favorite Sabbath album. So my least favorite is Forbidden, 1995. Then Cross Purposes at number 18, 1994 album. At number 17, I've got the album called 13, 2013. So number 16, I have Tear from 1990. And number 15, I had Headless Cross from 1989. So now we're getting into some slightly better selections. Got the bottom 25%, 25% out of the way here. So number 14 is going to be Never Say Die from 1978. This has the original lineup of Tony Iommi on guitar, Geezer Butler on bass, Ozzy Osbourne on vocals, Bill Ward on keyboards, and also does some lead vocals on this album. And the great Don Airey on, did I say drums? Bill Ward on drums and some lead vocals. Yes, Don Airey, the great Don Airey on keyboards. He's in Deep Purple now these days. So, yeah, that's kind of the next one up. So, out of the first 8, the holy 8 Sabbath records with Ozzy Osbourne fronting the group, Never Say Die, as well as Technical Ecstasy. We'll get to that one later. But those last two get a lot of stick, so to speak. They get a lot of slagging off. Never Say Die is unfairly bashed, and I do think it's unfairly. I do think it's the weakest by a good bit of all 8 of those albums. It doesn't have the power and intensity of the first 7 albums. It doesn't have the groundbreaking, genre-defining heaviness of the first 3 or 4. It doesn't have the progressive experimentation of the roughly 4 through 6 albums. And it doesn't even have the really heavy, tight, straight ahead with wild solos you find in Technical Ecstasy, the 7th Ozzy record. So the 8th is kind of doesn't have much to distinguish it. It's metal, but it's not super heavy. It's good songwriting, not great, but very, very good. Ozzy's vocals have weakened a good bit. Partially because he's lost interest in Black Sabbath by this time. This was supposed to be a Dave Walker fronted album. And they did write a song together, Junior's Eyes. Junior's Eyes originally boasted lyrics by Geezer Butler. Dave Walker sang them on a live BBC broadcast, which is pretty easy to find on the internet. Search Black Sabbath, Junior's Eyes, Dave Walker. I went through the circumstances last time about how that lineup fell apart, the very brief second lineup of Black Sabbath, how Ozzy came back, etc. So Ozzy came back, he recorded this album. Now, he didn't like the lyrics to Junior's Eyes. He refused to sing the lyrics that Dave Walker had sung. So he made Geezer write him new lyrics. Like, dude, I mean, you can't please this guy because he's so limited in his range. He's got to kind of have, at that point, I mean, he was starting to get so limited in his range, he has to have you kind of write around him, around his weaknesses, play to his strengths. And I think that was part of the schism, really, that had developed. Is Ozzy musically was not growing like the rest of the band. Never Say Die is kind of like a lot of great songs, but they're kind of like sketches, you know. They're not always fully developed. They're more mood than they are strong composition. But the mood is great. Bill Ward has a great sound on this. The beat on these are great. Of course, Tony and Geezer. Geezer's a little more reserved than usual. Tony's all over the place. His sound is a little different. His tone's a little different on this record. Air Dance is a cool song that's got some great multi-track guitar harmonies and some pretty melodies and lyrics. The lyrics and vocals by Ozzy and some nice piano work by Don Airey. Shockwave is kind of a great riff. It's the first song in a while by the band at that stage that goes back and talks about the devil and, you know, feel the force of another world. You know, he's the chosen one. He's right back to that chosen one business from the very first song on the very first album, Black Sabbath. Black Sabbath, Black Sabbath. Band song. So, but it's cool. It's kind of like a nice little bookend there. The title track is incredible. Great riff, powerful playing, great melody. Ozzy's vocals are fantastic on this, and the lyrics, Geezer's lyrics are great. They did a wonderful performance on, I want to say it's Top of the Pops, perhaps. It was a BBC show. And I'm trying to remember if it was dubbed, like lip synced or not. The band that was lip synced was Ozzy. Yeah, I guess Ozzy was lip synced. But they did a good job, and the band looked really cool. Ozzy had kind of a white outfit with fringe, and then Tony had black outfit, and he was kind of moving into the real signature look that he kind of kept really for the rest of his life and career, with the black leathers and the crosses and such. Longer hair, bigger mustache. Never Say Die, great song. People Going Nowhere, Taken for a Ride. I don't know. It's just amazing. So those are some key tracks for sure. And Johnny Blade is kind of a cool song. Hard Road, they did a video for. I really like this one song called Over to You. That's a really cool song. But the album wraps up with an interesting pair of tracks. One called Swinging the Chain, which is an instrumental track. See, by this time, what had happened with the prior album, where Ozzy just lost interest in even finishing all the songs, you know, whether Geezer tailored the lyrics or music or what have you to him or not. He just kind of lost interest in the whole business. So consequently, you had two tracks that don't, you know, like on Tammy Legacy, you had one song where Bill Ward sang lead because of Ozzy's non-interest, non-participation. So in this one, you have two. One, Swinging the Chain, which they went ahead and made it an instrumental. Then it segues into this one called Breakout, which I believe has some horns in it. I'm not sure who plays the horns. That's a fact I've never gotten the full answer to. Joel Seigler's definitive Black Sabbath website, black-sabbath.com, which isn't the official band website, but it's the kind of the unofficial official website, but it's got everything you need to know about Black Sabbath. This guy sets everything straight. So maybe he mentions it, but I don't recall. Breakout is sung by Bill Ward. Uh, cool lyrics, cool singing. Bill was a perfect fill-in for Ozzy. And the only other song Bill had done previous to, well, he'd done "It's All Right" on Technical Ecstasy. I mentioned that, though not by name. He had done "Blowing a Jug" a little after the fact, buried down deep in the ending mix of Sabotage, with Ozzy playing piano, blowing on a jug. Totally nuts. But anyway, I think if things had gone forward with Dave Walker in the band and they had recorded "Never Say Die," I kind of wonder if maybe Bill Ward, to kind of make things smoother, the segue, would have sang lead on even more songs on the album. Because later he does solo material where he sings, and he's a perfectly nice singer. Um, so anyway, that's kind of "Never Say Die." That's number 14. So I'm going to go up a notch to number 13 with "The Eternal Idol" from 1987. I did a whole kind of show on this a few installments back on MUSIK as I was giving my personal recollections of Sabbath. But I recapped that in the last video. So let's just get into the album. Why is it number 13? Okay, well, first of all, this one is during the period where the band was barely a band, not cohesive at all. Recovering from the splintering of the original lineup, instrumental lineup after they'd gotten back together twice and fractured because of Bill Ward, and then later Geezer Butler dropping out, and then Tony kind of resignedly creating a solo album, which ended up becoming a Black Sabbath album. So Tony and Jeff Nichols are the only constants, so even the Seventh Star Band is falling apart. Eric Singer's back on drums. Of course, like I said, Iommi and Nichols, and Tony Martin debuts on vocals. And I mentioned last time how this album had been recorded with Ray Gillen on lead vocals, who finished out the Seventh Star tour. Ray Gillen was considered a really great singer. He was kind of a handsome guy, and he had really long hair. He dressed in these kind of Edwardian, meets leathers kind of look that was just very 80s. Looked like it was pretty cool, and he had a really high voice. He had the kind of voice that became very popular in metal for quite a time. This kind of soaring mid-range to high voice, and things didn't work out though with Black Sabbath and old Ray Gillen. They'd done the whole album. They had a new bass player for this album. It's Bob Daisley, who had played with Ozzy's solo band on and off after this. Bob Daisley had been in Widowmaker. He had been in between Ozzy stints, he'd been in Uriah Heep for a couple albums. Before any of that, he was in Rainbow. And he plays bass on maybe one track on Long Live Rock and Roll. The rest are played by Blackmore himself. And he did that tour, and he actually sang backup vocals. He was the only backup vocalist in the Dio Rainbow besides Tony Carey, who was himself a lead vocalist in other projects. Daisley is a motherfucker. That guy, he can write music, he can write lyrics, he can arrange, he can play the bass. On this album, he plays some fretless bass, and it sounds great. I think on the very first track, he plays fretless bass, and it's called The Shining. So it's based, on the movie, the book, imagery, Stephen King. Anyway, they got this guy named Tony the Cat Martin from a band called Alliance. And he passed the audition, and he re-records all of Ray Gillen's vocals for the whole Eternal Idol album. And I think he betters him. A lot of people prefer Ray Gillen's work. Ray Gillen is kind of one of those semi-mythical figures, in the Sabbath history that people just love talking about him because he never had a finished official product, and so people are kind of eager. They like to hear his bootlegs. They like to hear him do renditions of songs, originally sung by Ozzy or Dio or even Glenn Hughes. And I liked that too. I mean, I was eager to hear all that stuff too. And I finally heard his version of Eternal Idol, which was released as like part of a bonus disc of the deluxe Eternal Idol set DVD. I'm sorry, CD from several years back. And like I said, his versions are cool, but Tony Martin not only soars like him, but he also has this roughness and this kind of Dio-esque quality. And I think he melded very, very good with Tony, better than Ray Gillan. I mean, Ray Gillan was veering a little too much towards slick metal vocals. Too much in that direction. Tony Martin could do that stuff, but it wasn't his bread and butter. He stretched his range quite a bit doing Ray Gillan's parts, and he sounds great. He pulled it off. Basically, this album is just a collection of riffs. They're great riffs. The Shining is a kind of a classic. Has several musical segues and parts. Really great music video, great riff, cool solo that's kind of evocative. Tony's doing some of the same scales he did in Lonely is the Word, and will later do in Feels Good to Me, which I already covered that on Tier. That was one of the lesser albums that I discussed in the previous video. So, hope you're still with me here. Hope I'm still with me. Eternal Idol, yeah, I mean, it's just one great riff after another. There's one song called Hard Life to Love, which is kind of this chuggy riff and really soaring kind of vocal chorus. And then this solo, man, it's one of Tony's very best solos. I mean, if that song was just the solo, it'd be fine. Bob Daisley, by the way, wrote all the lyrics to this album. Did a great job. They're almost up there with the stuff he did for the Blizzard of Oz album. It's really some fine lyrics he wrote for Ozzy. But yeah, this is more straightforward. Let's see their song called Glory Ride. Just, I guess it seems to be about Hell's Angels and motorcyclists. And there's a chorus where he's like, let's take a chance. And man, he hits a high, it's amazing. It's kind of one of those, how do you do that? Kind of like Dio's next to the last line in Children of the Sea. They say that it's, oh, whoa, he goes way up there. So, Born to Lose, there's just lots of cool songs. The title track to Eternal Idol is kind of a return after some time to the kind of doomy, slow lyric riffs of the early stuff. And it's kind of an epic track. It's long. Lyrics are great. It's very pessimistic. It's basically talks about God, talks about kind of the end of the world kind of deal. What's wrong with humanity? How we're kind of like these zombies, these mechanized robots, and politicians try to make the decisions, and they don't know what's going on either. And so yeah, you and I are masters of this world. As something of power tries to poison our world. Greed, money taking over their souls, mechanical brains. Politicians don't know. Those are some of the last lyrics. Sorry I messed up some of those. They're very worthwhile. I promised you guys I would talk about lyrics more at some point, so I'm trying to throw a few in here. But in my article, I described them as cautionary apocalyptic lyrics in the vein of Geezer Butler. I used to like Eternal Idol even more than I do now. But, I had to admit that for all its greatness at what it is and its sound, it's, in the scheme of Sabbath albums, it's not, an almighty classic. It's just very good for what it is. So, let's go to number 12. This will probably surprise some people that this is so low down on the list, but that's okay. It's my list, and I'm just going to do what I want. I read a top 20 countdown list recently, and that's what inspired me to go back to my article and to do this video. It was 20 because it included the Heaven and Hell album, Devil You Know. And some of the ones that were really low, like in the bottom 5, bottom 10, were kind of shocking to me. So yeah, this one was high on their list, but me, it's an album that was one of the first that I kind of cut my teeth on with Black Sabbath when I was like 15 years old, and you know, it's a classic. I mean, there wouldn't be any of this other stuff if this album been hadn't worked. It did. And the album's Black Sabbath, self-titled, from 1970. It's the first album. It's got the original lineup: Iommi, Butler, Ward, Osborne. So like this is kind of where it all began, and you know, starts with like thunder and lightning and rain, and then it's riff with the church bells going, and it's real doomy, and it's like wow, you know, there wasn't much like this before that time. There were some menacing kinds of songs, like you know, even like Arthur Brown, Fire, and some of the Black Widow stuff, and some of the Coven stuff, but this was kind of like all the stars were right with this one. Just the mood was, and the album cover with this witch in the wilderness in front of a house, just legendary stuff. So, song like Sabbath, there's a lot of controversy over who actually wrote the lyrics. Ozzy took credit on it for it on the live album. Speak of the Devil, he says something like the first song I ever wrote. That's just kind of like spinning tall tales, though. I mean, really, it wasn't the first song that he was involved in, and probably wasn't the first one he wrote. But he really didn't write songs. That's kind of another one of those myths, is that Ozzy was a songwriter. Not Ozzy was not a songwriter. He was a vocalist and very good in his day. He contributed some lyrics here and there, maybe some phrases, mainly like "Oh yeah" and "Oh yeah, baby." Sorry, he did. I mean, he added them to songs. He was ad-libbing. The closest to a definitive solution to this is that I read that. Let me see. Ozzy had a dream about some dark figure. He told Geezer, and Geezer wrote the lyrics. Or he told Geezer, and Geezer helped him write the lyrics. Or Geezer had the dream and told Ozzy, and Ozzy wrote the lyrics. Probably what happened is Geezer had the dream and wrote the lyrics. But we'll just say, for sake of argument, that Ozzy wrote the lyrics to this song. I kind of doubt it, but you know, we'll go ahead and chalk one up for him. But I know Geezer had something to do with helping him with it. This album is kind of, I mean, it's legendary. It's got a lot of multi-song cycles, a lot of jamming. It was recorded in late 1969, and it's very 1969 hard, heavy psychedelic rock of that era. A lot of Cream influence, and obviously the first Zeppelin album had a similar kind of expansive jamming sections. This album has the great NIB, which some people think stands for Nativity in Black, but it's really just nib. They said that Bill Ward's beard looked like a nib to a pen, the old fountain pens, and then they just made it NIB. But NIB is their second song after the title track. That's kind of about the devil, and it's blatantly about Lucifer. Lucifer falls in love with a human woman. All this Geezer's idea. Geezer's riff. The song starts out with a bass intro and then has a distorted bass, which is some really early heavy distorted bass. I know there's some other bands that had done it on different tracks, of course, with fuzzy bass. But this one was extremely, metal, and it definitely led to stuff like a lot of Lemmy's bass lines and Cliff Burton, Anesthesia Pulling Teeth from Metallica, and that kind of thing. It's kind of the birth of that metallic bass, distorted bass sound. So, real multi-part song sections. This album is Side two has a great long one called long song called Wicked World, and it also breaks into different parts. Um, this album has, depending on what version you go by, because there's an American pressing and a British. There are two covers on this song album. Um, I think it was the. Hope I get this right. One of them, British or American, I can't remember which, went with Wicked World as first song on the side two. The other one went with Evil Woman by the band Crow. Um, Evil Woman kind of disappeared for the most part as time went on because most later pressings all had Wicked World, which Wicked World's a much better song. Well, Evil Woman's okay. I mean, it's good, but again, it was a cover. Then the last song on the album, Warning, which is another long piece with a whole bunch of different parts. Warning itself was a cover. It was written by Ainsley Dunbar, the drummer, and I believe he wrote it for his group, Ainsley Dunbar Retaliation, but I might be wrong. It's interesting that he wrote such a cool and interesting, blues jam song like this, Dunbar, early in his career, because he didn't really go on to be a big songwriter. He's mainly known as a kind of ubiquitous session drummer. Played in a lot of bands. I'm probably going to forget a ton of them. I mean, he played in the original Journey. He played in Whitesnake briefly. I think he played in Jefferson Starship. A ton of other bands that unfortunately I'm forgetting that I should remember. But yeah, he only did a little bit of everything over the years. But this is early in his career, and he was a kind of a band leader. And he recorded the song Warning, and his Warning is pretty cool. But Sabbath is just taking it to another level. So after this album, as far as I know, there is not a single cover of anyone else's material on any Sabbath studio album. There's not even any covers of covers on live stuff until we get into like 1989, the Tear tour. Tony Iommi covered Apache from the Shadows, and the band did a part of Mars by Holst the Planets. And that's really it, really they were all original group. So anyway, this album is you can't overestimate how important it is. I think I kind of played it out back in high school, maybe. Otherwise, it might be higher on my list, but I still love it. I still like hearing it. So the next one that we're going to get to, let's see. Let's thumb through here. That was number 12. So number 11 on our list is going to be Master of Reality. Another one a lot of people probably think should be higher. Master of Reality is a really important record too. That's the third studio album, came out in 1971. Same exact lineup as the last album that we talked about, Black Sabbath. This one pretty much defined like doom metal, doom rock for generations of musicians and listeners. Kind of the prototype of stoner rock. Oh man, I mean, this is really an important and influential album. A lot of it's really heavy and slow and sludgy. It opens up with Sweet Leaf, great pro marijuana song. And then kind of goes on. After Forever is kind of a slow, doomy song, and allegedly Iommi wrote the lyrics. He took credit on the original album, but actually for lyrics and the music. But actually, he and Geezer wrote the music, band arranged it, and Geezer wrote the lyrics. After Forever is kind of a pro-Christian message. It's very well done. It really kind of talks a lot about religion and hypocrisy and people professing maybe to be Christians and they aren't like real Christians. I've talked about some of this in my videos before. Probably my least favorite track on the album is Embryo slash Children of the Grave. Embryo is a little instrumental. Children of the Grave is the most popular song off this album. It's very well known. They always played it live, pretty much through every lineup. Every single lineup played Children of the Grave. Sweet Leaf is almost as well known, but not really played much after Ozzy left the band. But I love Children of the Grave, and it's a anti-war, anti-nuclear war message, and it's a lot about young people and hippies or whatever having a revolution, standing up and because their generation is the children of the grave. They're children of the grave because uh, must the world live in the shadow of atomic fear? Will they win the fight for peace or will they disappear? I don't know, man. Some great stuff. So um, another great song here is "Lord of the World." Really slow, dirgy song, and it's kind of Satan talking to humanity and saying, I'm the Lord of this world, and you've kind of made me this. Um, you gave me power in the world where you exist. The soul I took from you was not even missed. Great stuff, man. And then there's Solitude, which is the non-heavy track. It's mellow. I think it has. Does it have flute? Tony plays flute on some of these albums. I think it has a little flute by Tony. Um, it's very mellow. It's one of those few songs in the early albums that you can't quite tell it's Ozzy singing because the vocal style is so different. Planet Caravan on Paranoid is kind of like that, but it's got a lot of effects on it, but you can just tell it's Ozzy. It's pretty mellow. Solitude is very mellow, and it's really uh, a very, uh, I don't know how to put it really. It's a very tender kind of vocal. It's really a very pure singing voice coming from Ozzy. He's not yelling. He's not singing with kind of a bluesy attack. He's really just singing, albeit he's not projecting, tremendously, but it's beautiful. And it's a downer of a song. My name, it means nothing. My fortune is less. My future is shrouded in dark wilderness. Sunshine is far away. Clouds linger on. Everything I possess, now they are gone. This is probably my favorite song on the album. And then the closing of the album is Into the Void, which another kind of chugging, slower, heavy song, and it's a science fiction kind of song. It's basically the apocalypse is coming, like a nuclear apocalypse, and freedom fighters are escaping the world, and on a rocket ship they're hurling into the void, risking their own lives to find like a new home beyond Earth, which is left behind for destruction. In my original article, I said this was sonic sci-fi impressionism. Um, but yeah, this is and also wrote this is a towering metallic landmark, the album, and it is. It still holds sway today. It's amazing. So I think now I'm probably going to wrap this one up since it's almost already as long as the other one. I'm going to try to check here and make sure that I do some of this right here because I got up to Master Reality, number 11. So the top 10, let me make sure I'm doing this right, not forgetting something. Yeah, 12, 11. So number 10, counting down to number 1, we're going to talk about in part 3, and that'll be the end. So that'll be coming up. Let's see, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4. Okay, got it. Got the solid 10. So the revered 10, the 10 Sabbath albums that I can't live without, which half their catalog. And the top 5 are really the essential ones for me personally. And they'll probably surprise you what some of them are. I'm not going with the whole premise of the article I alluded to earlier that I read this past week that, inevitably Paranoid was going to be number one, simply because it was the most influential and the biggest charting album, the most well-known album with the most well-known tracks. Paranoid's not my number one. So that's all I'm going to say. But anyway, I'll be back with part 3, and I'll wrap up with my top 10 countdown and my top 10 Black Sabbath albums. So take care.